be a puppet show. Well, I'll talk in that general direction anyway. And let's see what happens in terms of adventures and stories about edges and things like that. And I'm trying to get my chin up so it doesn't show me. So I've been climbing I'm 56, and I've been climbing since I was about 12, 13. I grew up in the Lake District. It's a strange way to put it, but kind of nobody loves me like I do. And what I mean by that is I've never been afraid to take risks, but I've taken risks, I like to think, with a degree of conscious thought, conscious effort, a lot of learning. Climbing, and certainly winter climbing in Scotland, is dangerous, and it is a dangerous game, and it almost doesn't matter how you want to dress it up. If it goes wrong, on one side you're alive, and on the other side you're dead. And it's a very real death, it's a very cold death, and it's inescapable. I could talk for about 4 days on this, okay, so we'll try and distill it down into a couple of minutes, but and I get quite excited when I start to really think about what Scottish winter climbing and the environment in the Scottish mountains in winter can bring us. And it's just a fun place to be, and an inspirational place to be as well. 2014, there was myself and Helen Renard and Malcolm Bass. We were in the northwest of Scotland, and we'd gone to try a new route. We walked into the bottom of this, the crag, the climb, looked in great condition. Malcolm led off on the first pitch, and it was hard climbing on steep sandstone slabs, which were thin layers of ice, thin layers of snow, not particularly compacted, hard to get gear in. Took Malcolm a long time to lead this first pitch. It was then quite a technical section. I remember the next pitch was my pitch. I traversed around a few meters to the right to find a slightly easier line. I reached a big snow ledge, started to build a belay to kind of tie ourselves to the rock, and belayed. Shouted down and brought Malcolm and Helen up. It's time for Helen's lead. She was placing gear as she was climbing to protect herself, and then traversed above us. So she was almost above us, maybe 25 meters out, and climbing well, placed a little bit of gear. And then all I remembered was hearing this noise from above, where Helen just kind of went, whoa. And it's quite funny because in situations like this, people often talk about everything slowing down. And that's what happened over the next probably 30, 40 seconds. Everything for me slowed down massively. Helen let out this kind of grunt. She'd fallen off. And I looked up, and all I could see was Helen's kind of shape falling through the air, and just in a bit of a jumble, so her arms and legs were kind of flailing, and she was falling, and then the rope came tight from me through the gear and onto Helen as she fell below the last runner. And the last runner, the rope weighted through that last runner, and it, like that, poof, the runner came out. So Helen keeps on falling. The next two pieces of gear I remember being virtually side by side, so the weight was going to come onto those at almost the same time, and it did. And the rope, I remember the rope held for what seemed like ages, thankfully, but it probably wasn't ages, and the two runners again ripped out. So Helen was still falling, and there were the next two pieces. I remember the rope pulling tight as she fell below those, and the rope was weighted for half a second, a nanosecond, before those two pieces of gear ripped out. And Helen's she's carrying on falling. I wasn't aware of physically where Helen was in this fall. I was aware that the the runners and the connection of the rope between Helen falling and this belay were dwindling. There was one runner left between Helen and the rope going to Helen and our badly constructed belay. I was really conscious of this kind of almost like rising pitch of the rope, and then boom, and that peg blew. I remember watching it. I could physically remember it. The peg came out and it just blurred out of my vision. And I knew then that the whole of Helen's weight, because she was continuing to fall, was going to come onto this belay. As soon as Helen's weight came onto me, I was completely pulled round to one side. I was conscious of the belay that I'd made was collapsing. I know the peg pinged out straight away. The spectre, the metal spike hook that I put into the turf, that ripped straight away. The sling that was round a spike, because it was being pulled sideways, that flipped off. And I remember being at eye level with the number 5 rock. And that metal wedge, the number 5 rock, went and twice moved down that crack. And I remember just my eyes just opening and staring at that rock as it chink chink moved down twice, and then it held. And we were suspended by that one number 5 rock. We were pretty convinced that Helen was dead. You don't take a 45, 50 metre leader fall and survive it easily. Certainly not bouncing off a ledge, as we realised she'd done as well. And the belay plate is locked off. We're shouting and shouting, Helen, Helen. And then from way, way down below comes this, I'm all right. And we're like, there was just this moment of relief. And then bizarrely, Helen says, I'm okay. I'll climb back up and give it another go if you want. And at that point, Malcolm and I just burst into tears. Both of us did, at the relief that we were all, we thought, pretty much alive. We thought pretty much, as we turned out we were, pretty much in one piece. And the ridiculousness of Helen thinking, oh, I know, I'll give it another go. We extricated ourselves from that cliff. It took about 2 hours, but we basically, that was it. We weren't going to be climbing up anymore. And we abseiled off, 2 or 3 abseils, and a couple of hours later when we got onto the flat ground, I remember we just gave, all 3 of us just had the biggest hug you can ever imagine. And the tears flowed quite freely at that point. We were standing at the bottom of this buttress, it's still in this hug, and 2 pals came over. They'd been climbing on another part, and they were like, how you doing? Great day. And we were like, oh, just fuck off. It's like, you know, their normal joie de vivre of meeting friends in mountain environments, it just wasn't appropriate there and then. And we had a bit, you know, that was just that triptych of people who were there, who'd shared something really, really, really extreme, really emotional, really. The reason for telling that story is that's as close to that line, that edge, that demarcation, that's as close as I ever want to go. You know, on one level, the thing that kept us on that side, the right side of that performance edge, was it was that number 5 rock. It was physics. You know, it was the laws of physics of that piece of metal expanding into that rock and it holding. And the good thing is, from my perspective anyway, we're all still good friends. We're all still climbing. We're all still climbing in winter. We're all exploring new routes still in winter, and we're loving every minute of the experience. Can I stop now?
That was pretty
They're good.
intense.
Yeah, it's quite hard to do that actually.